Writing, I read your letter. Mason's text hit my screen at 11:47 that night, and for one full second, I forgot how to breathe. The problem was, it wasn't my letter. It belonged to Laura. 3 hours earlier, she had cornered me outside the campus library with a white envelope pressed between both hands. Please, Ethan. I can't give it to him myself. I looked at Mason Reed's name written across the front and felt my stomach tighten. Of course it was Mason. Campus golden boy. Swim captain. Straight A student. The guy who remembered everyone's name and somehow made basic eye contact feel personal. Also the guy I had spent nearly a year pretending I didn't watch whenever he crossed the quad. You want me to deliver your love letter? Laura winced. Don't call it that. What should I call it? A deeply embarrassing personal message. I should have refused. A normal person would have. Instead, I shoved the envelope into my jacket and told myself I was being a good friend. That was all. It had nothing to do with the fact that Laura trusted me, or that Mason smiled at me differently sometimes, or that I was already wondering what she had written. By 6, swim practice was ending. I waited outside the aquatic center while guys spilled through the doors in hoodies and track pants, laughing too loudly. Then Mason appeared. His dark hair was still wet, and a towel hung around his neck. He saw me and smiled immediately. That stupid, easy smile. Ethan, you waiting for someone? You actually. His eyebrows lifted. Should I be worried? Probably. He laughed, stepping closer. I pulled out the envelope before I could lose my nerve. This is for you. Mason looked at it, then at me. A letter. Apparently people still use paper. And your hand delivering it? His fingers brushed mine as he took it. Barely a second. Still, my pulse jumped like an idiot. I shoved both hands into my pockets. Just doing someone a favor. Before he could respond, someone inside yelled his name. Mason glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. His eyes stayed on my face longer than they needed to. Should I open it now? Every smart part of my brain screamed yes. Stay. Make sure he sees Lara's name at the bottom. Clear up anything before it starts. Instead, I took a step backward. Read it when you're alone. I don't know why I said it like that. Maybe nerves. Maybe because some selfish part of me didn't want to watch him realize Lara liked him. Mason's expression changed. Not much. Just enough to make my chest tighten. Okay, he murmured. I will. I left before he opened it. For the next 3 hours, I tried not to think about him reading Lara's words. I failed. Then my phone buzzed. Mason, I read your letter. Can we talk? I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I could have fixed everything with 6 words. It wasn't mine. Lara wrote it. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Then another message appeared. Mason, I had no idea you felt that way. My heart started pounding. Not because he had misunderstood. Because he hadn't said no. Writing, I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. The truth was 6 words long. It was not my letter. Lara wrote it. Instead, I sent. Where do you want to talk? Mason replied almost immediately. Denny's off College Avenue. 20 minutes. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were cold even though the heater had been running the whole drive. Mason was already inside, sitting in the back booth with 2 cups of coffee between us. The envelope rested beside his phone. Seeing it made my stomach drop all over again. He looked up when I approached, and something in his expression softened. Hey. Hey. I slid into the seat across from him. For a few seconds, neither of us touched the coffee. Mason rubbed his thumb along the edge of the envelope. I did not know you thought about me like that. My mouth went dry. Mason, the letter. I read it 3 times. He gave a nervous laugh and looked down. Mason Reed looked nervous. I had seen him race in front of packed bleachers without blinking. I had watched him give campus tours to groups of parents like he had been born holding a microphone. But right then, he could barely meet my eyes. I kept thinking I must have missed something, he continued. Like maybe you had been trying to tell me, and I was too stupid to notice. This was the moment. I could fix it. I should fix it. Then he looked at me again. There was no disgust there. No awkward smile. No careful speech about how he only saw me as a friend. Just confusion. And something warmer that made my heartbeat turn uneven. It is not simple, I managed. Mason leaned back slightly. Because I am a guy? Because you are you. The words came out before I could stop them. His eyebrows lifted. That sounds worse somehow. I laughed, mostly because panic needed somewhere to go. You know what I mean. I really do not. A smile pulled at one corner of his mouth, but his eyes stayed serious. How long? My fingers tightened around the paper cup. How long what? How long have you liked me? I stared at him. The diner noise seemed to fade behind the ringing in my ears. You do not waste time. I have been thinking about this for 3 hours. He paused. So yeah, I am a little past small talk. I looked toward the window, buying myself a second. Cars moved through the wet parking lot, headlights sliding across the glass. Long enough to know better, I said quietly. Mason did not laugh. He just watched me, holding my gaze until I had to look down. I wish you had told me in person. Guilt hit hard and fast. I tried. That part, at least, was true. I was standing right there. Then you ran away before I opened it. I did not run. You left fast enough to qualify. His foot brushed mine under the table. Neither of us moved. The contact was small, probably accidental. It still made my chest tighten. Mason glanced down, noticed, then looked back at me without pulling away. I do not know what my answer is yet, he said more softly. I forced myself to nod. You do not owe me one. I know. He reached across the table before I could stand, fingers closing gently around my wrist. But give me a little time, okay? His hand stayed there longer than it needed to. Long enough that I stopped breathing. Then he let go. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. Lara's name lit up the screen. Did he read it? What did he say? Writing. By the time I got back to my apartment, Lara had sent 4 more messages. Ethan, did he open it? Please do not make me come over there. I stood in my kitchen with my jacket still on, staring at the screen like it had personally betrayed me. I could tell her the truth. Mason thought the letter was mine. Mason had held my wrist across a diner table. Mason had asked how long I had liked him, and I had answered like the feelings were mine because, somehow, they were. Instead, I typed, he read it. He needs time. Lara called before I could put my phone down. What does that mean? Her voice came out too loud through the speaker. It means he did not give an answer. Was he upset? No, that word slipped out too quickly. Actually, he was pretty calm. Calm is good, right? I closed my eyes. Probably. She exhaled, relieved, and started talking about every possible meaning behind every word Mason had apparently not even said. I barely heard her. All I could feel was the memory of his fingers around my wrist. The next morning, I found Lara outside the library with 2 iced coffees and enough nervous energy for both of us. You look terrible, she told me. Thanks. Did you sleep? Not really. She handed me a drink. Because of Mason? My chest tightened. Because you called me at midnight. I called you at 12:15. Exactly. She smiled, but then her expression softened. You would tell me if something went wrong, right? The lie sat right behind my teeth. I nodded anyway. Before the guilt could crush me completely, someone called my name from across the quad. Mason. He was walking toward us with 2 paper cups in one hand and his backpack slung over one shoulder. Lara froze beside me. I probably did too. Mason gave her a polite smile, then looked directly at me. I was hoping I would catch you before your shift. He held out one of the cups. Oat milk. 1 sugar. I stared at it. You remembered? You order the same thing every time. Lara glanced between us. Every time. Mason's mouth twitched. We have had coffee before. In groups, I added too quickly. His eyes stayed on mine. Not always. The silence after that was not long, but it was long enough. Lara looked down at her own cup. I should get to class. I turned toward her. Lara, I am already late. She forced a smile and walked off before I could stop her. Mason watched her go, then lowered his voice. Did I make that weird? No. She is just, I search for something believable. She worries. About you. About everything. He nodded, but I could tell he was not convinced. Rain started tapping against the stone walkway, light at first, then harder. Mason glanced toward the library entrance. Come on. We hurried beneath the narrow awning beside the building, shoulder to shoulder, while students rushed past us. There was not enough room. His arm pressed against mine, warm through my jacket. I shifted slightly. He did too. Somehow, that only brought us closer. Mason looked down at the coffee in my hand. You have not taken a sip. I am deciding whether you poisoned it. That would be a dramatic answer to a love letter. I laughed, but the sound died when he did not. He was watching me again. That same focused look from the diner. Why did you never tell me? He asked quietly. My pulse jumped. Tell you what. Any of it. Rain hit the awning above us, loud enough to make the small space feel sealed off from everyone else. I thought you did not like me, he continued. You barely look at me sometimes. I swallowed. Maybe you misunderstood that. Mason held my gaze. Maybe I have misunderstood a lot of things about you. Then his hand brushed mine between us, and this time, neither of us could pretend it was an accident. Writing, for 1 second, Mason's hand stayed against mine beneath the awning. Not touching exactly, just close enough that the side of his finger rested against my knuckle while rain hammered the pavement a few feet away. I could have moved. So could he. Neither of us did. Then the library doors opened behind us, and a group of students spilled outside laughing. Mason stepped back first. The space between us felt colder than it should have. "Dinner," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What? Have dinner with me tonight." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking almost annoyed with himself. Not as an answer. Not yet. Just us talking without Rain or Lara disappearing halfway through. My stomach tightened at the way he said her name. "You noticed that?" Hard not to. His eyes searched mine. Is there something I should know? There it was. The perfect opening. I could tell him everything. Instead, I looked down at the coffee he had brought me. She is protective. Mason did not look convinced, but he let it go. 7. 7 works. The restaurant he picked was a small burger place 15 minutes off campus, far enough away that we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. That should have made it feel less like a date. It did not. Mason had changed out of his team jacket and into a dark green sweater I had never seen before. I hated that I noticed. I hated even more that he noticed me noticing. "What?" He looked down at himself. "Nothing." "You stared." I looked. For a while. I reached for the menu even though I already knew what I wanted. "You are imagining things." Apparently I have been doing that a lot lately. The joke landed between us and went quiet. Mason's smile faded. Mine did too. A server stopped by, and we ordered quickly. When she walked away, he turned his water glass slowly between his hands. "Can I ask you something without making this worse?" "That depends entirely on the question." "Why me?" I forgot how to breathe for a second. Mason leaned back, but his eyes never left mine. The letter said a lot about how I make people feel, how I remember things, how I act like everything is easy even when it is not. His voice softened. Most people do not notice that last part. I knew Lara had written the words, but I knew exactly what he meant. I had seen Mason sit alone before races, bouncing one knee under the bleachers. I had watched him smile through interviews, even when his hands shook afterward. "You are not as good at hiding things as you think," I murmured. His eyebrows lifted. "You noticed?" "I noticed things. About everyone." I looked away. "Sometimes." Mason leaned forward, forearms resting on the table. "Ethan." Just my name. Nothing else. Somehow, it felt like a question. "I notice you," I admitted. The air changed. His gaze dropped briefly to my mouth, then rose again so fast I almost convinced myself it had not happened. Almost. Our food arrived, breaking whatever had started. For the next hour, we talked about everything except the letter. Mason told me he hated being called the golden boy because it made every mistake feel public. I told him I hated parties because I never knew what to do with my hands. "You could hold mine," he offered, too casually. I laughed. He did not. On the walk back to my car, our hands brushed once. Then again. The third time, Mason hooked one finger around mine. My entire body went still. He looked at me, waiting. I started to close my hand around his. Headlights swept across the parking lot, followed by the sound of familiar laughter. 2 guys from the swim team crossed near the entrance. Mason let go immediately. Neither of us spoke until they passed. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. "Were you going to hold my hand?" My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. "Were you going to let me?" Mason stared at me for a long second. I think I was. Writing. By Monday morning, 2 people from Mason's swim team had already decided we were dating. I found that out when I walked into the student center and heard someone call. There he is. Reed's mystery guy. My entire body went hot. Mason stood near the coffee counter with 3 teammates, one hand wrapped around a paper cup. He looked over immediately. For half a second, his expression softened. Then one of the guys followed his gaze and grinned. "So it is him." "Drop it, Kyle." Mason's voice stayed calm, but his shoulders tightened. Kyle lifted both hands. "I am just saying, you disappear for dinner, come back smiling at your phone, and now library guy shows up looking terrified." "I always look terrified," I muttered. Mason almost smiled. Almost. Another teammate leaned toward me. "Did you write him that letter?" The question hit harder than it should have. I opened my mouth, but Mason stepped between us before I could answer. Not dramatically, just enough that his shoulder blocked part of my view. That is between me and Ethan. The room seemed to get quieter around us, even though it probably did not. Kyle's eyebrows shot up. Okay, definitely dating. Mason gave him a look sharp enough to end the conversation. The guys backed off, still laughing, and headed toward the exit. I should have felt relieved. Instead, guilt twisted low in my stomach. Mason turned back to me. You okay? You did not have to do that. Do what? Make it sound real. His face changed. Just slightly. I thought it was becoming real. My chest tightened. That is not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Before I could answer, Laura walked into the student center. Her eyes moved from Mason to me, then to the small space between us. She had heard enough. I could tell. Ethan, she called, too evenly. Can I talk to you later? Yeah, of course. Mason glanced between us. His jaw flexed once. I have practice. He started to walk away, then stopped beside me. For what it is worth, I was not pretending. His fingers caught lightly on the sleeve of my jacket, holding me there for one quiet second. Then he let go and left. Laura watched him disappear through the doors. He thinks you wrote it, she said. Not a question. My stomach dropped. Laura, I can explain. Can you? Her voice stayed low, but that somehow made it worse. Because I have spent 3 days waiting for you to tell me what he said, and now half the swim team thinks the letter was yours. A few students passed behind us. I lowered my voice. Not here. Then where? After your class. I will tell you everything. She studied my face, and something in her expression shifted. Hurt first, then realization. You like him. I looked away too fast. That was all the answer she needed. Laura let out a quiet breath and stepped back. Wow. It was not supposed to happen like this. You mean you were not supposed to get caught? That is not fair. Neither is letting me think I still had a chance. She left before I could stop her. I stood there with my coffee going cold, feeling like the worst person alive. Then my phone buzzed. Mason, did I make things worse? I stared at the message. Another one appeared before I answered. I do not want to go back to pretending nothing is happening between us. Writing. I found Laura outside her afternoon class before she had the chance to avoid me again. She stopped when she saw me, but she did not smile. I am sorry, I started. I know. Her arms folded across her chest. That does not explain why you let him think the letter was yours. I looked down at the cracked sidewalk between us. Because he did not look upset. Laura went quiet. I forced myself to keep going. He looked nervous, confused, but not upset. And then he asked how long I had liked him. Her expression changed, just a little. And what did you say? Something vague and terrible. Ethan. I know. I rubbed a hand over my face. I was going to fix it. Then he started showing up with coffee. He asked me to dinner. He almost held my hand. Saying it out loud made it sound worse. Or maybe more real. Laura stared at me for a long second. You have liked him for a while. It was not a question. My throat tightened. Almost a year. She looked hurt, and I hated myself for putting that there. Why did you never tell me? Because you liked him too. So you decided lying was kinder? No, I shook my head. I decided nothing. That was the problem. Laura exhaled slowly and glanced toward the parking lot. You need to tell him before this gets any further. I will. Today. I nodded. Today. Mason texted 10 minutes later. Come to the aquatic center after practice. Please. The word please made my stomach twist. By the time I arrived, the building was mostly empty. Mason sat alone in the bleachers, elbows resting on his knees, hair still damp from the pool. He looked up as I climbed the steps. You came. You asked. I stopped one row below him, keeping distance between us. Mason noticed. His jaw tightened. Is Laura angry because of me? Not because of you. Because of us, then. My pulse jumped. Mason, do not do that. He stood, coming down one step. Do not act like I imagined everything. I am not. Dinner felt real to me. His voice dropped. The rain. The coffee. You looking at me like you knew exactly what I was trying not to say. I could not move. Mason stepped closer, but not enough to touch. I have been replaying every conversation we ever had, he admitted. Every time you looked away. Every time I found an excuse to walk past the library. My chest tightened. You did that on purpose? A nervous smile flickered across his face. More than once. The silence between us stretched. Somewhere below, a locker door slammed. Neither of us looked away. I do not know what this means yet, Mason continued. I have never had to figure this out before. His hand lifted, hesitated, then settled lightly around my wrist. The same place he had touched in the diner. But I know I did not want you to leave that parking lot without holding my hand. My heart started pounding. Mason, there is something I need to tell you. His fingers tightened just slightly. Can it wait 1 minute? It really should not. He searched my face, and whatever he saw there made his expression soften. Then tell me after practice tomorrow. He stepped back, but his hand stayed around my wrist for 1 more second. Because I think I am ready to give you an answer. Writing, the next afternoon, I got to the aquatic center 10 minutes early and spent all 10 trying not to leave. Mason's message had been sitting at the top of my phone since morning. After practice. Same place. No joke. No extra words. Just enough to make my chest feel tight every time I read it. When the team finally cleared out, Mason found me near the bleachers. He had changed into jeans and a gray hoodie, but his hair was still damp. You came early. You noticed. I notice when it is you. The words landed harder than he probably meant them to, or maybe exactly as hard. He climbed the steps and stopped 1 row below me, close enough that I could see the nervous movement in his jaw. I have been thinking, he began. My stomach dropped. That was never a good opening. About us. About what happens if we do this. He looked toward the empty pool instead of at me. People already talk. My teammates are watching everything. My parents come to meets. Half the campus thinks they know me. I folded my arms, mostly to keep my hands still. So you changed your mind. Mason's head snapped back toward me. That is not what I said. It sounded close. He climbed 1 more step. Ethan, I am trying to be honest. So am I. No, you are trying to make it easier for me to reject you. That shut me up. Mason let out a breath and rubbed both hands over his face. I do not want to lose what we had before. The words hit exactly where I was already bruised. We barely had anything before. That is not true. His voice sharpened. You worked late on Tuesdays, so I started getting coffee across from the library. You always sat near the back at swim meets, so I looked there before every race. You left parties early, so I started leaving early too. I stared at him. You never told me any of that. You never told me anything either. For a second, neither of us moved. The building felt too quiet around us. Mason looked away first. Maybe this is a bad idea. My chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. Right. I stepped down past him. Then we do not have to make it one. His hand caught my sleeve before I reached the aisle. Ethan. I stopped, but I did not turn around. Let go. His fingers loosened immediately. That somehow felt worse. I am scared, he said behind me. Quiet. No golden boy confidence left. I am scared people will decide what this means before I do. I am scared I will say the wrong thing and hurt you. I am scared we will try this, and if it goes bad, I will lose the one person who sees me when I am not performing. I finally looked back. Mason's expression was open in a way I had never seen before. You think I am not scared? I know you are. He took 1 careful step closer. That is why I thought you might be regretting it. I am regretting how it started. The truth pressed hard against my ribs. Not how I feel. Mason's eyes searched mine. Then tell me what you were trying to say yesterday. My throat went dry. This was it. The moment I should have chosen from the beginning. The letter was not mine. His face went still. I kept going before fear could stop me. Laura wrote it. I was only supposed to deliver it. Mason took a step back. The distance between us suddenly felt huge. So all of this was a mistake? The letter was. I swallowed. But my feelings were not. He looked at me like he wanted to believe that, and had no idea how. Then he glanced away. I need a minute. Mason, please. His voice cracked just slightly. Do not follow me. He walked out before I could say anything else. And for the first time since this started, I was not afraid he would reject me. I was afraid he would think every real moment between us had been another lie. Writing, for 3 days, Mason did not text me. He still went to practice. I still worked my shifts at the library. Campus kept moving like nothing had happened, which somehow made it worse. I sent 1 message. I am sorry. I should have told you the first night. He read it. No reply. I did not send another. On Friday, the swim team had a home meet. I told myself I was only there because Laura had a class project nearby and did not want to walk back alone after dark. That was a lie. I sat near the top of the bleachers, where Mason used to look before every race. This time he did not. He won anyway. Everyone around me stood and cheered. I stayed seated, clapping with my hands cold in my lap. After the final event, I left before the crowd cleared. I was halfway across the parking lot when I heard my name behind me. Ethan. I stopped. Mason jogged toward me in his team jacket, hair still damp, breathing harder than the short run should have caused. He stopped a few feet away, not close enough to touch. You were leaving. The meet was over. You always wait. Not anymore. His jaw tightened. So that is it. I looked at him. You told me not to follow you. That was 3 days ago. You did not exactly update the instructions. For half a second, something almost like a smile touched his face. Then it disappeared. Mason looked down at his hands. Lara talked to me. My stomach dropped. What did she say? That she wrote the letter. He rubbed his thumb over the edge of his sleeve. And that you liked me before any of this happened. I said nothing. The truth sounded different coming from someone else. More exposed. Mason stepped closer. Why did you let me believe it was yours? Because when you looked at me that night, you did not look disgusted. The words came out rougher than I meant them to. You looked scared, but you stayed. His eyes held mine. That is not enough. I know. You let me build something on a lie. I know. Stop saying that. His voice stayed low, but it shook. Tell me why. I looked away toward the emptying building. Because I wanted one night where you thought I might be someone you could choose. Silence. Long enough that I heard a car door slam across the lot. Mason moved closer again. And dinner. Real. The coffee. Real. The rain. My throat tightened. Real. He glanced down at the space between our hands. The parking lot. I was going to hold your hand. Mason let out a breath like he had been holding it for days. I know. His fingers flexed at his side, but he did not reach for me yet. I was angry because I thought you made me feel something that was not there. It was there. Then say it without the letter. I met his eyes. No crowd. No excuse. No one else's words between us. I like you, Mason. My voice barely carried. I have for almost a year. He stayed still. I forced myself to keep going. Not because you are the swim captain. Not because everyone knows your name. I like the version of you who gets nervous before races and pretends he does not. The one who buys the wrong coffee for himself because he remembered mine. Mason looked down, smiling once despite himself. Then his hand reached for mine. Slow. Careful. That is what I was waiting to hear, he murmured. His fingers closed around mine. This time, neither of us let go. Writing, Mason kept holding my hand like he was afraid I might disappear if he loosened his grip. I looked down at our fingers, then back at him. So what happens now? He gave a small, nervous laugh. I was hoping you knew. You are the golden boy. I thought you had a plan for everything. That is mostly good lighting and panic. I smiled before I could stop myself. The tension between us eased, but his hand stayed exactly where it was. I am still mad at you, he admitted. That seems fair. And I still do not know what label I am ready for. Also fair. His eyes searched mine, waiting for disappointment. I squeezed his hand once. I am not asking you to figure out your whole life in a parking lot. Mason's shoulders dropped a little. But I need to know this is not something you will pretend never happened tomorrow. He went quiet. Then he stepped beside me instead of standing across from me. Our shoulders touched. I do not want to pretend anymore. The words were simple. That made them feel real. We walked back toward the aquatic center together. Mason did not let go when a few teammates came through the doors. Kyle noticed first. His gaze dropped to our joined hands, then jumped to Mason's face. Oh, he said, dragging the word out. So mystery solved. My stomach tightened automatically. Mason glanced at me. For 1 second, I thought he might pull away. Instead, his fingers tightened around mine. Yeah, he replied. Something like that. Kyle grinned, but did not push. He just held the door open for us. Inside, the lobby was still crowded with swimmers, parents, and students. No one stopped what they were doing. No dramatic silence. No one cared as much as we had feared. Mason seemed to realize that too. He let out a breath and looked almost embarrassed by his own relief. Lara stood near the vending machines, waiting for me. Her eyes went straight to our hands. I slowed. Mason started to release me, probably thinking I needed space. I did not let him. Lara watched that small decision and nodded once. You finally told him? Without a letter, Mason answered. She looked at me. Good. There was still hurt between us. I knew one honest conversation would not fix everything. But she stepped forward and gave me a quick hug anyway. Do not make me deliver anything for either of you ever again. Deal. Mason waited until she left before looking at me. She is terrifying. You have no idea. A week later, he showed up at the library 5 minutes before my shift ended with 2 coffees. 1 oat milk with 1 sugar. One black coffee he clearly hated but kept buying because he was stubborn. You know you can order something else, I told him. I am committed now. To bad coffee? He leaned against the desk, smiling. Among other things. When I clocked out, we walked across campus the same way we had before all of this started. Same brick paths. Same evening crowd. Same people calling Mason's name from across the quad. The difference was his hand brushing mine once, then turning palm up between us. An invitation. I took it. No letter. No misunderstanding. No excuse. Just his fingers closing around mine as we kept walking. And when someone from the swim team shouted, "Reed, is that your boyfriend?" Mason looked at me first. Not for permission to hide. Just to make sure we were choosing the same thing. I nodded. He smiled and called back, "Yeah, he is." Then he pulled me a little closer and kept walking like it was the most normal thing in the world. Maybe that was what made it matter. Not that everything had changed. Just that, finally, neither of us was pretending it had not.